You know what this is? You're going to say rattle trap, ain't you? It's a rattle trap. Floater! Like what you leave in a toilet. Right. Anyway. Great bait if you want to run this about 1 foot, 2 foot deep over grass, over brush piles, or just in really shallow water over rocks, like in a river situation, something like that. This is an awesome bait to use. And it makes really good topwater too, because you can twitch this thing a couple of times and rip the pants right off of it. And boy, I'll tell you what, I've caught some bass on topwater doing this thing too. So this is another one of them topwater deals like I've talked about before. But we're here in the midweek, and I want to throw a tip around with you guys. And there's been a lot of talk here lately about dyeing baits and stuff like that. So I just kind of want to put my 2 cents on it and show you a little trick that not too many guys are doing that makes it to where you can shadow a dye, but without using a Q-tip. So let me show you how to do that. Are you ready to run and gun? It's time for blast off. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to Bassin 101. Todd here with you, making fishing simple for everybody. There's something I want to throw across to y'all, and that is mustache hair. And that is, there's been some talk about dyeing baits, and I'm a firm believer that if everybody's throwing one particular color, and you dip, and you take a spike it, and you dip your worm tail in there or something like that, something different. That's going to make all the difference in the world. But I'm the kind of guy that doesn't really all the time like dipping stuff just straight in here. I like a shade of a dye. Now, a lot of you guys are going to say, well, that's what they make the spike it pins for. Well, and I'll give you credit. Yeah, I'll agree with you. That is what they make the spike it pins for. However, it's a different color. This orange is not the spike it orange you get in the pin. Okay? And also with that pin, you're drawing it like you're doing a Sharpie. So you get these really sharp lines into what you're trying to do. And me, I like stuff to look more natural, okay? But that's just me. I've got pins. I've used pins. So I'm not putting them down, okay? I'm not putting them down. I have no problem with pins. I'm just going to show you a trick on how to do something a little different with this. Now the trick I'm trying to show you is, I call it shading. Now, shading is something I came across with, I don't know, a couple of years back, just playing around, and ran across this. I was like, oh man, that's a cool way of doing something. Perfect example. All right, now here's some Hales crawls I did. I really hope that you can see this. That's a crawfish, and just shading on the claws. Now this might not look like much. This is chartreuse, and it's just on the claws. And this might not look like much. You probably can't see that very well, but in the water you will. But this is what I call shading. Another one, this one looks really cool. This I used the orange spike it with. This is watermelon red flake with the orange crawls. Now can you see that? It's a very natural looking kind of shading. You see what I'm talking about? Now you can't get that with Q-tips, and Q-tips are messy. Let's see if I can get you another shot of that, of the crawfish. I mean, just barely on the claws, if you can just see that. So what I'm going to do, because this is something I do off and on, it just depends. I've got a sluggo. Imagine that. I'm a dork. I'm going to take a Sluggo. I'm going to give it a shading of an orange throat. And you're going to say, now, how in the world are you going to hold that thing and get it in there? That's not how I do it. But I will use this bottle and this whole entire jar. Let me show you what I'm doing. I'm going to shake it up. And you got residue in the lid. See that? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to tip that lid down. I'm going to take just the head of the Sluggo. I'm just going to kind of swim it around. Just like this. You can actually press it in there if you want to. And now I've got a shading. See that? That's a very subtle shading. It's not on the top. It's just on the sides and the belly. As this can give us half a day to a day, you'll start seeing it blending all the way through. But of course, I'll let it dry a good half day to a day before I put it back with the rest of them, because trust me, that Spike It dip, once it dries on these things, it's not going to bleed on the other stuff. I know that for a fact, because these two are in with the rest of my regular color, and they're not bleeding over. But if you put them in right afterwards, then yeah, it absolutely will. So we got a little shading on that Sluggo. And if you wanted to, you could do the same thing with the tail, like with some chartreuse. You can absolutely do that. You can do that with some chartreuse. So that would be kind of cool. Let's see if there's any, I've had this thing dry a little bit. Let's see if there's any, nope, no residue at all. None. Because you just barely put a little bit on that. But that's all it is. Pretty simple little deal out of that. And that's exactly how I did these. I swam them around. I actually did one claw at a time. And I swam the claw around, did the other claw, swam it around, and just made it inconsistent. That's all I was doing, just making it inconsistent on these things, and it looks a lot more natural that way. I call it Spike It shading, is what I call it. Now that's calming down a little bit. That thing looks really good. It's like a bleeding shad. It's pretty cool, and that's a very simple way of doing it. Again, like I said, the back still retains its color, but the rest of it is still shaded. And the cool thing about Spike It is it's not going to bleed through. That's what's awesome about Spike It dip. I have used some other dips that just bled. So that's the stuff. Again, nothing against the pins, guys. If you use pins, then I have no issues with that. But I'm just trying to show you a cool way. And if you do it like this, man, these bottles will last you for years. Think about that for a minute. So again, that wonderful shading that you can do with baits. And another thing this works really good for too, if you're into dyeing trailers for jigs, there's a good way to do it too. Me personally, I don't dye tips on my jig trailers. And the only reason I don't do that is because majority of the time they bite the tips off of the trailers. And you're left with a strike. You come back and all you got is the rest of the chunk left on the jig. I'm not a fan of that. So I prefer just to fish my jigs straight out the way they are. But as far as other soft plastics go, I mean, trick worms, you name ribbon tail worms, there's all kinds of stuff you can do this with. And it's like I said, it's just a shading. And don't pour some of it in the cap. Just shake it up and do it just like that. See, there's just enough dye in there. And if you hold it flat especially, when you hold it flat and dip these in there, it makes a big difference, because it's not concentrated in one spot. It's hitting it from all different kinds of spots. I just got a bit on my finger. So that's what's cool about it. Just wanted to pass that tip along to you guys. Like I said, it's called Spike It shading, and just something that I think you guys can probably use. As I see all the time on YouTube how everybody's using these dips and everything else, and they're saying, well, dip the tail here, dip the tail there. It's like, yeah, but that's a little different than what everybody else is doing, and it's just a shade of it. It's not the whole entire thing. I ain't taking this Sluggo and dipping the head down in the orange and turning the whole entire head about that deep. And not only that, but you can't control how much you're putting in there. And if you hit the sides of the rim, oh gosh, dude, you're getting orange all down through here. And everything. No, man, just if you want a little bit of orange on that bait to really make a difference, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. And by the way, it's been about, what, 2 months since I did a Sluggo video on how to modify things. That's 2 months later. Look at it. It's actually sitting at a 90-degree angle. It was sitting like this at first. But see what I mean? When it sets, the chemicals in the plastic will still do its job. The original sits about like this. But this is like this. And you got a lot more action out of that Sluggo. Look at that thing. And the head still goes just like the original. So there's nothing wrong with that. And the texture is still good. But bam, there you go. Big old orange head. See how that's fading in nicely? That's very natural. So, hope you guys enjoyed the tip. There's been a lot of guys here who's been joining the channel here lately, been subscribing. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. And I hope you can get some information out of this stuff. Love hearing comments from you guys. And hope you enjoy this little midweek deal. Until next time, tight lines. May the Father bless you and keep you in Yeshua's name. Fish on.